I brought my wife to one work event. My boss shook her hand. A month later, she was shaking his sheets. Professional events facilitate personal disasters, and I should have known better. The annual Telecommunications Awards gala at the Riverside Hotel, one of those forced corporate celebrations where everyone pretends to enjoy overpriced chicken and watered-down cocktails while networking their way to promotions they'll never get. My name is Russell Blackwood, and I'm a telecommunications engineer for Meridian Systems, 37 years old, decent salary, quiet life in Buffalo's suburbs, the kind of guy who fixes problems other people create and never gets credit for preventing disasters that never happen because I prevented them. Catarina, my wife of 8 years, had been complaining about never meeting my colleagues. "You talk about work constantly, but I've never seen these people," she'd said, applying lipstick in our bedroom mirror. "It's like you have a secret life." She wore her black cocktail dress, the one that made her look like she belonged in boardrooms instead of our modest colonial on Elmwood Avenue. Catarina always had that effect. She could transform any room just by walking into it. 5'6", auburn hair, green eyes that could convince you to buy swampland in Florida. The hotel ballroom buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. My colleagues clustered around high-top tables, their wives making polite conversation about schools and vacation plans. I grabbed 2 drinks from the bar and found Catarina studying the crowd like a general surveying a battlefield. "Which one is Phillip Ashworth?" she asked. "My boss, division VP, corner office, company BMW, the golden boy who'd climbed the corporate ladder by stepping on everyone beneath him." I pointed toward the center of the room where a small crowd had gathered around a tall man in an expensive suit. "The one holding court," I said. Phillip Ashworth looked like Central Casting's idea of a successful executive. 44 years old, silver at his temples, $1,000 suit that fit like it was painted on. He commanded attention without trying, the kind of natural charisma that made people lean in when he spoke. "Introduce me," Catarina said. I should have said no, should have made some excuse about him being busy, suggested we grab dinner instead. But marriage is built on compromises, and this seemed harmless enough. We approached the group as Phillip finished telling some story about a client meeting in Chicago. He spotted me immediately, flashing that practiced smile he used on investors and board members. "Russell, glad you could make it." His eyes shifted to Catarina. "And you must be the famous wife I've heard so much about." "Catarina Blackwood," she said, extending her hand. That handshake. I watched it happen in slow motion, his fingers closing around hers, holding just a beat too long, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. Contact. His handshake initiates future betrayal. "Phillip Ashworth. Russell's told me wonderful things about you." Lie. I'd barely mentioned Catarina to him beyond basic pleasantries, but Phillip had that gift for making people feel special, like they were the most interesting person in the room. "He's modest about his achievements," Catarina said. "I had to drag him here tonight. Russell's one of our best engineers. Keeps the whole network running while the rest of us take credit." Phillip's laugh drew chuckles from the surrounding group. "What line of work are you in?" "Event management, corporate retreats, product launches, that sort of thing." "Fascinating. We're always looking for fresh perspectives on our client events." I watched them talk, noting how Catarina's posture changed, shoulders back, head tilted just slightly, that smile she used when she wanted something. Phillip leaned closer, speaking just loud enough for her to hear over the ambient noise. The conversation lasted maybe 10 minutes. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that would raise eyebrows, just 2 attractive people discovering they had business interests in common. When we finally excused ourselves, Phillip shook my hand with the same practiced grip. "Great meeting you, Catarina. Russell, we should discuss those network upgrades Monday morning." Walking back to our table, I felt a strange unease, like standing on ice that looked solid but made suspicious creaking sounds under your weight. "He seems nice," Catarina said, settling into her chair. "He's my boss." "And?" And nothing, just making conversation. The rest of the evening passed without incident. Dinner, speeches, awards for people who'd never actually touched a piece of telecommunications equipment. Catarina charmed everyone she met, my colleagues, their wives, even the hotel staff. She had that ability to make people feel like they'd known her for years. Driving home, she was unusually quiet. "Penny for your thoughts," I said. "Just thinking about what Phillip said, about fresh perspectives. He says that to everyone." "Maybe, but he seemed genuinely interested." Development. 1 month transforms courtesy into intimacy. The changes started small. Catarina began working later, taking calls in the other room, spending more time on her laptop. She'd always been ambitious, so none of it seemed unusual at first. 2 weeks after the gala, she mentioned running into Phillip at a coffee shop downtown. "Pure coincidence," she said, stirring pasta sauce at the stove. "He was meeting a client. I was scouting venues for the Henderson wedding. We chatted for maybe 5 minutes." Small world. He mentioned that Meridian might need help with their annual client retreat. Asked if I'd be interested in putting together a proposal. I looked up from my laptop. "That's great, honey. Could be a good opportunity." I thought so too. Professional growth and all that. The proposal took her 3 weeks to complete. She worked on it every evening, spreading papers across our dining room table, making phone calls to vendors and venues. I offered to help, but she waved me off. "Better if you're not involved. Conflict of interest and all that." Made sense. Meridian had strict policies about employee relationships affecting business decisions. I went back to my network diagnostics and left her to it. She submitted the proposal on a Thursday. Friday evening, she came home with champagne and Chinese takeout. Guess who just landed the Meridian account? We celebrated that night, making plans for how to spend the extra income. Maybe finally renovate the kitchen, take that trip to Ireland we'd been talking about for years. Catarina seemed happier than she'd been in months. The first client meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Catarina spent Monday evening getting ready like she was attending a state dinner, trying on 3 different outfits, redoing her makeup twice, practicing her presentation in front of the bathroom mirror. "It's just Phillip and a couple of other executives," I said. "You've got this." "First impressions matter, Russell. This could lead to bigger contracts." She left early Tuesday morning, her presentation materials organized in a leather portfolio I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she said she'd bought it specifically for the meeting. Image is everything in this business. The meeting went well, according to her recap that evening. Phillip loved her ideas, the other executives were impressed, and they wanted to move forward immediately. She'd be working closely with Phillip's assistant to coordinate logistics, attending planning sessions at Meridian's downtown office. "This is exactly the break I needed," she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Phillip thinks there could be more opportunities if this goes well." Over the next 2 weeks, those planning sessions became frequent. Catarina would leave the house by 8 in the morning and return after 6, energized in a way I hadn't seen since we'd first started dating. She talked constantly about the project, venue options, catering menus, entertainment possibilities. "Phillip has such vision," she said one evening. "He sees the big picture while everyone else gets lost in details." Sounds like a good boss to have. "He's not my boss, Russell. We're partners on this project." Partners. The word stuck with me for reasons I couldn't quite articulate. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later, completely by accident. I was debugging a network issue that required access to Meridian's email servers, routine maintenance that usually took a few hours. While running diagnostics, I noticed unusual traffic patterns on the executive subnet. Personal emails routed through company servers weren't uncommon, but the volume seemed excessive. As the senior network engineer, I had administrative access to all company communications for security purposes. Protocol required investigating any anomalies. I pulled the logs and found hundreds of messages between Phillip's account and an external address I didn't recognize. The timestamps showed they'd been exchanging emails daily for the past month, often late at night or early in the morning. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the most recent exchange. From pashworthmeridian.com to catarina.eventsagmail.com. Subject, tonight can't stop thinking about yesterday. Same time tomorrow. From catarina.eventsagmail.com to pashworthmeridian.com. Subject, tonight, counting the minutes. Wear the blue tie. Discovery. Their arrangement surfaces through careless evidence. I stared at the screen, reading the messages again to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. But there was no ambiguity in phrases like, "your hands on me," and "when Russell's at work." My wife was having an affair with my boss. I printed the emails, 23 pages of increasingly intimate correspondence dating back to the week after the gala. They'd been meeting at the Marriott downtown, room 412, every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. The same days, Catarina claimed to have planning meetings at Meridian's office. The most recent message was from that morning. "Can't wait much longer. When are you going to tell him?" "Soon. Just need the right moment. He's been so stressed with work. I could make that stress disappear. Both of us could disappear." I sat in my office until nearly midnight, reading every message, cross-referencing timestamps with Catarina's schedule. The evidence was overwhelming and methodical. They'd been planning this for weeks, discussing everything from divorce lawyers to vacation destinations. Driving home, I felt strangely calm. No anger, no hurt, just cold, analytical thinking, like debugging a particularly complex network problem. Identify the issue, gather data, formulate a solution. Catarina was asleep when I got home, or pretending to be. I stood in the doorway watching her breathe, this woman I'd shared 8 years of my life with, wondering how long she'd been planning to leave me. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter said she had an early meeting and would be home late. I knew where she'd really be, room 412 at the Marriott, with my boss who thought he could steal my wife and my life. But I'm a patient man. I fix problems for a living, and this was just another problem that needed solving. Demand. She requests uncomplicated dissolution. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. Thursday evening, Catarina returned home with the careful composure of someone who'd rehearsed what they were going to say. She found me in the kitchen, making dinner like nothing had changed. "We need to talk," she said, setting her purse on the counter with deliberate precision. "About what?" She studied my face, looking for signs that I knew. I kept my expression neutral, the same bland pleasantness I used during staff meetings. "About us, Russell. About where this marriage is going." I turned off the stove and gave her my full attention. "I'm listening. We've grown apart. You know it, I know it. We want different things." "Such as?" "I need more than this." She gestured around our kitchen at the life we'd built together. "More excitement, more opportunity, more everything. You're content with routine, but I'm not." "I see. I've been thinking about this for months. We're not happy, Russell. Not really. You seem happy enough lately." Something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty, maybe guilt, but she pressed on with her prepared speech. "I want a divorce. Nothing complicated, nothing messy. We split everything fairly and move on with our lives." "Don't make this difficult," she added, as if I were a client who might object to her proposal terms. "Agreement. He promises smooth proceedings." I nodded slowly, like I was considering her request. "You're right," I said. "We have grown apart." Relief washed over her features. She'd expected arguments, tears, desperate pleas to work things out. Instead, I was being reasonable. "I'm glad you understand. I was worried you'd try to fight this. What would be the point? If you're not happy, you're not happy." "Exactly. We can file no-fault papers, split the assets, and both start fresh." "Sounds fair. I assume you've already thought about the logistics?" "Some. I'll probably get a place downtown, closer to work. You can keep the house if you want. Generous of you. She missed the sarcasm entirely, too relieved by my cooperation to analyze my tone. I'll contact a lawyer next week. Get the paperwork started. This doesn't have to be ugly, Russell. No, I agreed. It doesn't have to be ugly. She went upstairs to pack some clothes, claiming she'd stay at a friend's house while we sorted things out. I watched her gather her belongings with the efficiency of someone who'd already mentally moved out. I'll call you in a few days, she said, standing in our doorway with 2 suitcases. Once I've talked to the lawyer. Take your time. After her car disappeared down our street, I opened my laptop and got to work. Investigation. Powerful men accumulate hidden vulnerabilities. Phillip Ashworth had built his career on image management and strategic networking, but successful executives always have secrets, and secrets leave digital footprints. I started with his company email, which I already had administrative access to. Beyond the messages to Catarina, I found correspondence with offshore banking institutions, encrypted file transfers, and communications with shell companies I'd never heard of. Phillip was smarter than most corporate executives. He used coded language and avoided explicit details. But patterns emerged when you knew what to look for. References to consulting fees that didn't match any contracts in our system. Business development expenses charged to accounts that shouldn't exist. The real breakthrough came when I cross-referenced his expense reports with his email timestamps. Phillip claimed business trips to Chicago and Detroit on days when his emails showed he was in Buffalo, meeting Catarina at the Marriott. He was billing the company for fake travel while using the time for personal activities. But that was small-scale fraud compared to what I found in his encrypted files. Phillip had been skimming money from client contracts for 3 years, routing payments through a network of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. The amounts were carefully calculated, never enough to trigger automatic audits, but substantial when accumulated over time. Discovery. Offshore accounts exist in traceable databases. I spent the weekend mapping his financial network, using techniques I'd learned during my cybersecurity certification. Every wire transfer left records, every account had identifying numbers, every transaction created a paper trail for investigators who knew where to look. By Sunday evening, I had a complete picture of Phillip's operation. He'd stolen approximately $2 million from Meridian Systems over 3 years, using forged invoices and manipulated billing codes. The money sat in accounts registered to shell companies with names like Atlantic Consulting Services and Great Lakes Business Solutions. Documentation, financial geography maps into journalistic format. Raw financial data meant nothing to most people, but journalists understood stories. I spent Monday evening organizing my evidence into a coherent narrative, timeline of transactions, copies of forged documents, bank routing numbers, and email correspondence, showing Phillip's awareness of the illegal activity. The package included everything a competent reporter would need to verify the story independently. Account numbers, transaction dates, copies of internal emails discussing the transfers. I even included screenshots of Phillip's expense reports showing the fake business trips. But I needed the right journalist, someone with experience in financial investigations and access to resources for verifying offshore banking records. Contact. Investigative reporters appreciate anonymous sources. Miranda Voss had spent 15 years covering corporate fraud for the Buffalo Business Journal. Her exposés had brought down 2 city councilmen and a school board superintendent. More importantly, she had contacts in federal law enforcement and banking regulatory agencies. I'd read her articles for years, impressed by her thoroughness and attention to detail. She never published allegations she couldn't prove, which meant she'd investigate my claims carefully before going public. Tuesday morning, I created an anonymous email account and sent her the complete file. Ms. Voss, I'm a telecommunications engineer with access to financial records showing systematic embezzlement at a major Buffalo corporation. The attached documents detail offshore accounts, forged invoices, and fraudulent expense reports totaling approximately $2 million over 3 years. The perpetrator is Phillip Ashworth, Division VP at Meridian Systems. All account numbers and transaction records are included. I'm providing this information because shareholders and employees deserve to know when executives steal from their own company. Please verify independently before publication. I cannot be contacted at this address. A concerned employee. I sent the message from a coffee shop downtown, using their public Wi-Fi and a laptop I'd bought with cash. No digital trail connecting back to me. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. "Russell, I need to see you in my office." Philip's voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. I found him pacing behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in the clipped tones of someone trying to control their temper. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying. "Make it go away." He ended the call and focused on me with predatory intensity. "Sit down." I took the chair across from his desk, maintaining the same neutral expression I'd used with Catarina. "We have a problem," Phillip said. "Someone's been accessing confidential company files. IT security flagged unusual activity on the executive subnet." "What kind of activity?" "Email archives, financial records, personnel files. Someone with administrative access has been copying sensitive information." "That's concerning. Have you contacted the FBI? Corporate espionage is a federal crime." His jaw tightened. "We're handling it internally for now. But I need to know if you've noticed anything unusual, system intrusions, unauthorized access, that sort of thing." "Nothing out of the ordinary. But I can run a complete security audit if you'd like." "That won't be necessary." He leaned back in his chair, studying me like a chess player contemplating his next move. "How's Catarina doing with the retreat planning?" "You'd know better than me. She's been working closely with your team." "Right, of course." His smile looked painted on. "Well, if you notice anything suspicious, let me know immediately." "Absolutely." Walking back to my office, I felt the first stirring of satisfaction. Phillip was scared, which meant Miranda Voss had already started making calls. Banking regulators, federal investigators, maybe even Meridian's board of directors. Publication. Headlines announce his fiscal geography. The story broke Friday morning, front page of the Buffalo Business Journal, with a headline that made my coffee taste better. Local executive accused of $1 million embezzlement scheme. Miranda had done her homework. The article included interviews with banking experts, statements from federal investigators, and confirmation from multiple sources that the offshore accounts existed exactly as described. She'd even obtained records showing Phillip's fake business trips, cross-referenced with hotel bookings that never happened. The piece was devastating and thorough, laying out 3 years of systematic theft with the precision of a legal indictment. By noon, every major news outlet in Buffalo had picked up the story. By evening, it had reached the national financial press. My phone buzzed with a text from Catarina. "What's happening at your company? Seeing news reports about Phillip." I replied, "Looks like he's in serious trouble. Guess you won't be working on that retreat after all." She didn't respond. Collapse. Regulatory interest follows media exposure. Monday morning brought federal agents to Meridian's offices. I watched from my cubicle as investigators in dark suits carried boxes of documents from Phillip's corner office. His company BMW was towed from the parking garage, presumably for evidence processing. By Tuesday, the Securities and Exchange Commission had frozen his assets pending investigation. The IRS announced they were conducting their own audit of his tax returns. Banking regulators in 3 countries were examining the offshore accounts. Phillip didn't come to work that week, or the next. Prosecution. Tax evasion charges formalize his downfall. The federal indictment came down 3 weeks later, 18 counts including wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy. The charges carried a maximum sentence of 40 years in federal prison. Assistant U.S. Attorney Eleanor Cross held a press conference announcing the arrest. She was a sharp-featured woman in her 50s who spoke with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a financial crimes case. Mr. Ashworth systematically defrauded his employer and the federal government over a 3-year period, she said, standing behind a podium decorated with the Department of Justice seal. He used sophisticated offshore banking schemes to hide stolen money while filing false tax returns. This prosecution sends a clear message that white-collar crime will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The local news ran footage of Phillip being led from his house in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled and his silver hair disheveled. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by circumstances he couldn't control or manipulate. I was debugging a router configuration when Catarina called. "Russell, we need to talk." "About what?" "About Phillip, about everything." "I thought you were staying at a friend's house." "I am, but this changes things." "How so?" Long pause. "Can we meet somewhere? I don't want to do this over the phone." We met at a diner near the university, neutral territory where neither of us had emotional attachments. Catarina looked tired, her usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. "I made a mistake," she said, stirring sugar into coffee she wouldn't drink. "Which mistake would that be?" "You know which mistake." I waited for her to continue. "Phillip and we were involved. But it's over now, obviously." "Obviously." "I want to come home, Russell. I want to work things out." Interesting timing. Her eyes flashed with something like anger. "This isn't about timing. It's about realizing what's important." "And what's important?" "Us, our marriage, what we built together." "What we built together? You mean the house you were planning to leave me? The life you said wasn't enough?" I was confused, going through something I don't know. Midlife crisis, maybe. "Is that what we're calling it?" She leaned forward, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled it back. "I made a terrible mistake, Russell. But people make mistakes. That doesn't mean we throw away 8 years of marriage. Some mistakes are bigger than others. I know that. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want." I studied her face, noting the desperation she was trying to hide behind determination. "What about the divorce? You seemed pretty certain about wanting out." I wasn't thinking clearly. He made promises he couldn't keep, made me think I wanted things I didn't really want. Such as? Freedom, I guess. Adventure. A different life. And now? Now I realize I already had everything I needed. Conviction. Felon status attaches to his permanent record. I pulled out my phone and showed her the news alert that had come through during our conversation. "Phillip Ashworth pleads guilty to federal fraud charges, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison." Her face went white as she read the headline. 12 years, I said, plus restitution of $2 million, which he doesn't have anymore since the government seized all his assets. He'll be 56 when he gets out, assuming good behavior. "Russell?" "He's a convicted felon now, Catarina. No more corner office, no more company BMW, no more promises about running away together. Just a prison cell and a lot of time to think about the choices he made." She stared at the phone screen like it might change if she looked hard enough. "How did you know? About us, I mean." "I'm a network engineer. I see everything that goes through our servers." "You've known this whole time? Since the week after you asked for a divorce? And you didn't say anything? What was there to say? You'd already made your choice." Downgrade. Her taste in partners reflects available options. She sat back in the booth, processing the implications. "You could have stopped it, could have confronted us, made a scene, something." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm your wife. You were leaving me for another man. Why would I fight to keep someone who didn't want to be kept?" "So you just let it happen?" "I let you make your own decisions. Same as I'm doing now." She was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at college students walking to class with their whole lives ahead of them. "What happens now?" she finally asked. That's up to you. You wanted a divorce, you can still have one. You want to come home and pretend none of this happened? We can try that too. But understand something. I'm not the same person I was a month ago. What do you mean? I mean, I learned some things about myself, about what I'm capable of when someone tries to take what's mine. She met my eyes for the first time since sitting down. You did this. The investigation, the arrest, all of it. You destroyed him. I provided information to a journalist. What happened after that was between Phillip and the federal government. Don't play word games with me, Russell. You ruined his life. He ruined his own life. I just made sure the right people found out about it. And what about my life? What about what this does to me? I signaled the waitress for the check. That's the beautiful thing about choices, Catarina. You get to live with the consequences. 3 months later, I was still living alone in our house on Elmwood Avenue. Catarina had moved back to her sister's place in Rochester, taking only what she'd packed the night she left. The divorce papers were filed but not finalized. She kept asking for delays, claiming she needed more time to think. I didn't mind the delays. For the first time in years, I enjoyed coming home to a quiet house where nobody questioned my decisions or complained about my lack of ambition. I cooked what I wanted, watched what I wanted, and slept through the night without someone tossing and turning beside me. The Meridian retreat was canceled, obviously. The company hired a new VP, a woman from Detroit who specialized in rebuilding departments after executive scandals. She instituted new financial controls and transparency measures that should have existed all along. I got a promotion to senior network engineer, partly because of my role in discovering the security breach that led to Phillip's exposure. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I accepted the raise and corner office without comment. Miranda Voss won a state journalism award for her investigation. Her follow-up articles detailed how corporate executives use offshore banking to hide stolen assets, leading to congressional hearings about financial transparency. She never discovered who provided her initial tip, though she mentioned in one article that anonymous sources were crucial to investigative journalism. Phillip was serving his sentence at a minimum security federal prison in Pennsylvania. According to news reports, he was teaching computer literacy classes to other inmates and working in the prison library. His ex-wife had filed additional civil suits to recover alimony payments, ensuring he'd have no assets when he was released. On a Thursday evening in November, Catarina called. "The papers are ready," she said without preamble. "Which papers?" "Divorce papers. My lawyer finished them yesterday." "Congratulations. Russell, before we do this, I need to ask you something." "Go ahead. Do you hate me?" I considered the question while watching snow fall outside my kitchen window. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate you." "Then why won't you forgive me?" "Who says I haven't forgiven you?" "You have?" "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Catarina. It doesn't mean pretending something didn't happen or going back to the way things were." "Then what does it mean?" "It means I understand why you made the choices you made. You wanted something different, something more exciting than what we had. Phillip offered that, or seemed to. You took a chance. And it was the wrong chance. Maybe. Or maybe it was exactly what you needed to figure out what you really wanted. I want my husband back." "No, you want security back. You want the comfortable life you walked away from. But you can't have that without the man who provided it, and you don't want him. You want the benefits without the person." She was crying now, soft sounds I could barely hear through the phone. "That's not true." "Isn't it? When's the last time you asked about my work, my interests, my thoughts about anything that didn't directly affect you? When's the last time you seemed genuinely happy to see me walk through the door?" "I don't know. Neither do I. And that's the real problem, Catarina. Not Phillip, not the affair, not the lies. The problem is that we stopped being partners a long time ago. We were just two people sharing a house and a bank account. We could fix that. Could we? Or would we just go back to being polite strangers who sleep in the same bed? Long silence. So that's it? 8 years of marriage and you're just giving up? I'm not giving up. I'm accepting reality. You fell in love with someone else or thought you did. That doesn't happen in happy marriages. People make mistakes, Russell. And people live with consequences. Philip's in prison, you're alone, and I'm starting over. Those are the consequences of the choices we all made. I love you. I know you do. In your way. What's that supposed to mean? It means you love the idea of me. The steady husband, the reliable income, the safe choice. But you don't love the reality of being married to an engineer who fixes network problems and watches documentaries on weekends. You don't know what I love. I know you left. Another long pause. The papers will be ready Monday, she said finally. I'll sign them. Just like that? Just like that. Don't you want to fight for us? For what we had? What we had is gone, Catarina. It died the day you decided Phillip Ashworth was more interesting than your husband. You can't resurrect something that's already buried. So you get your revenge, and I get nothing? I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth. The revenge was just a side effect. You destroyed a man's life. I exposed a criminal. There's a difference. Is there? Phillip stole $2 million from his own company. He filed false tax returns for 3 years. He committed multiple felonies long before he met you. I just made sure the right people knew about it. But you chose to expose him after you found out about us. The timing was coincidental. Was it? I thought about that question for a moment. Maybe not entirely, I admitted. Maybe I was more motivated to dig deeper because of what he'd taken from me. But the crimes were real, Catarina. The evidence was legitimate. He deserved what happened to him. And what about what I deserved? You deserved honesty. From him, from me, from yourself. Instead, you got lies and fantasy and promises that were never real. I deserved better than this. Yes, I agreed. You did. We both did. The line went quiet, except for the sound of her breathing. I'll sign the papers Monday, she said finally. Okay. Russell? Yeah? For what it's worth, I am sorry. About all of it. I know you are. Does that matter? It matters, but it doesn't change anything. No, I guess it doesn't. After she hung up, I poured myself a drink and sat in my living room, looking at the space where her pictures used to hang. I'd taken them down the week after she left, not out of anger, but because they felt like artifacts from someone else's life. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the heating system and the occasional car passing on the street outside. Peaceful, in a way it hadn't been for months before Catarina left. Maybe years. Monday morning, I signed the divorce papers in my lawyer's office. Simple, straightforward documents that dissolved 8 years of marriage in 12 pages of legal language. No contested assets, no custody issues, no ongoing obligations beyond splitting our modest savings account. That's it, my lawyer said, notarizing the final signature. You're officially divorced. How long before it's final? 60 days, standard waiting period. I walked out of his office into a cold December morning, breathing air that felt cleaner somehow, like the atmosphere had been filtered, removing particles I hadn't realized were there. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on your freedom. M.V. Miranda Voss. Somehow she'd figured out who her anonymous source had been, though she'd never published that information. Professional courtesy, maybe, or recognition that some sources needed protection even after their usefulness ended. I texted back, "Thank you for excellent journalism." Her reply came immediately, "Thank you for excellent evidence. Justice served. Justice. An interesting way to describe what had happened to Phillip Ashworth, Catarina, and me. Not revenge, not punishment, but justice, the natural consequence of choices made and actions taken. Philip chose to steal money and commit federal crimes. He was serving the sentence prescribed by law for those crimes. Catarina chose to leave her marriage for a man who made promises he couldn't keep. She was living with the consequences of that choice. I chose to expose the truth rather than live with lies. I was living with those consequences too. Standing on the sidewalk outside my lawyer's office, I realized I was genuinely happy for the first time in months. Not relieved, not satisfied, not vindicated, actually happy. The kind of deep contentment that comes from knowing you've handled a difficult situation with integrity. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Russell Blackwood? Speaking. This is Jennifer Martinez from TechFlow Solutions in Austin. I saw your profile on LinkedIn and wanted to discuss a senior engineering position we have available. I'm listening. It's a ground-up network infrastructure project for a major telecommunications expansion. Exactly your area of expertise. The salary is significantly higher than industry standard, and we'd handle all relocation expenses. Sounds interesting? Would you be available for a phone interview this week? I looked around at the Buffalo Street where I'd lived my entire adult life, at the gray sky and dirty snow that defined winter in western New York. Yes, I said. I would be very available. 3 months later, I was living in Austin, Texas, designing network infrastructure for a company that appreciated both my technical skills and my attention to detail. My new colleagues knew nothing about my divorce or my former boss's criminal conviction. I was just Russell Blackwood, senior engineer, the guy who prevented problems before they happened. I bought a house with a swimming pool and a view of the hill country, joined a hiking club, took cooking classes, started reading fiction again. Simple pleasures that felt revolutionary after years of routine compromise. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered what would have happened if I'd confronted Catarina and Phillip directly instead of exposing his crimes to federal investigators. Would they have ended their affair? Would we have worked things out? But those questions felt academic now, like wondering about alternate history. The path I'd chosen led to truth, consequences, and ultimately freedom for everyone involved. Phillip was learning new skills in federal prison. Catarina was building a new life in Rochester. I was designing networks in Texas and sleeping peacefully every night. Professional events facilitate personal disasters, but they also create opportunities for people willing to see them clearly. I brought my wife to one work event, and my boss shook her hand. A month later, everything changed. But change isn't always catastrophic. Sometimes it's exactly what you need, even when you don't realize you need it. I never attended another company party, but I didn't need to. I'd learned everything I needed to know about handshakes, about trust, and about the difference between revenge and justice. The difference is simple. Revenge is about hurting people who hurt you. Justice is about ensuring that actions have appropriate consequences. I chose justice, and justice chose me back.